Emotes. Whether you love them or hate them, they're an essential part of Clash Royale and have been from the very beginning. When the game was first released in 2016, there were only the 4 basic king emotes, but today there are hundreds of different emotes inside of the game. These emotes range from free emotes that can be collected by reaching certain milestones in the game, all the way to much rarer emotes that are either bought with real money or awarded to only the most elite players for their achievements. Most of the emotes in the game are pretty basic and sometimes seemingly random in nature. There are plenty of emotes in the game that are simply different characters making a certain facial expression, such as screaming, crying, laughing, or even the infamous Princess Yan emote. While those emotes are definitely great to have in the game, there is just something special about those emotes that are based off of a real life meme, movie reference, or something similar. Today, we're going to explore exactly that, so sit back, grab a snack, and relax as we explore the emotes in Clash Royale that were based on real life. This princess emote is perhaps the most classic example of an emote that you can instantly recognize where it came from. At least here in the US, I know for a fact that all of us saw this image at least once in history class growing up. This image and the associated character is referred to as Rosie the Riveter, and the poster was used extensively across the US in the early 1940s to encourage females to enter the workforce during World War II, since a lot of the working age men were off at war. It is very easy to tell that the princess emote was inspired by Rosie the Riveter, and it is actually pretty interesting that they chose to make it into a Clash Royale emote, since World War II propaganda doesn't have much to do with the game, but hey, we got this emote anyway, and it is fun to use from time to time. This Lumberjack emote was released in the second half of 2022, shortly after the Clash from the Past season, which was season 38, or only a few months after a certain Marvel movie was released. That's right, this emote is inspired by Doctor Strange. Anyone who has seen Doctor Strange or any other Marvel movie with him in it for that matter would probably recognize this emote to be a reference very quickly. Not only is the Lumberjack making the same hand movements as Doctor Strange often does in the films when using magic, but his third eye also opens, which is a common theme in Doctor Strange 2 specifically, but also in general pop culture. This emote is quite fun to use, especially if you make a crazy prediction or something like that, which is when it seems very fitting to use that emote, at least in my opinion. I'm able to piece together the timeline of some of the more popular emotes by simply looking them up or looking at the order they appear in on my emotes list if I have them, but I actually don't have this Goblin zombie emote. Regardless, the movement the Goblin is making in this emote is pretty much universally recognized as a zombie walk, and the roots of this movement trace back to horror movies of the 1930s and 40s when things like mummies would often walk this way. I'm sure this emote was released around Halloween time one year, since it obviously fits with that theme, and Halloween actually just so happens to be my personal favorite holiday. Because of that, I would actually love to have this emote, although I don't have it currently. When you get to the end of this video, comment down below how many of the emotes on this list you personally have unlocked. I'd be interested to see if any of you have all of them. This Hog Rider emote that was just released this season is probably one of the best examples of an emote that is based on real life. I would be extremely surprised if any of you watching this video hadn't heard of or seen this popular meme of a man tapping on his head. You will actually still spot this meme out in the wild today, but it became popularized all the way back in 2016 or 2017 when people started using it all of the time in one of two ways. On one hand, people would use it to denote that they were smart or made a good play or decision in some way, but on the other hand, some people used it sarcastically to point out that another person online wasn't using their brain or they were unintelligent in some way. I'm sure people will be using this emote in the exact same way when they use it inside of Clash Royale, but I wonder why it took Supercell the better part of a decade to release this emote, since the meme became popular all those years ago. Regardless, this emote is actually still in the shop, I believe, as of the release of this video, and it costs a couple of bucks of real money to buy. This Goblin emote was released at the end of 2023 around Christmas time, and it is very easy, at least in my opinion, to see where this emote came from. On screen now is a clip from the original Grinch movie in which we can see the Grinch slowly get a very wide grin on his face like he is planning something devious. The Goblin emote not only mirrors the same extremely wide grin, but it is Christmas themed, so I think we can be 100% sure that this emote is a reference to the Grinch. I actually like this emote quite a lot, and it is one of the few that I actually use pretty often when playing the game myself. Definitely let me know what you guys think about this one in the comments. This next emote could be thought of in a couple of different ways. Broadly, this emote is clearly a reference to Mexican culture, specifically Dia de los Muertos, or Day of the Dead, in which the Mexican people celebrate the lives of their ancestors. This holiday is essentially the Mexican counterpart to the American Halloween, except they celebrate it very differently. Now, to get more specific, you could assume that this emote is referencing the movie Coco, which was released in November of 2017. This is one of the more popular movies that would come to mind for most people when seeing anything like this emote, and many of the characters in the movie are actually depicted as skeletons since they have passed on to the next life when they are shown in the movie. This emote definitely has a lot of character, and it is a cool nod to Mexican culture and by extension the movie Coco. This Ice Wizard emote was released a couple of years ago, and if I remember correctly, you actually had to pay money for this one. I myself do not have this emote on any of my accounts, but it is a funny one when used in the right circumstance. This one isn't necessarily based on a specific movie, TV show, or real life event, but it is a common sight that many people know the meaning of. Eating popcorn, especially the way the Ice Wizard is doing it here, is a sort of gesture people typically use to mean that they are enjoying watching an argument, watching a fight, watching someone get mad, or something of that nature. For example, if you click on almost any controversial post on social media and scroll down far enough in the comments, I'm sure you'll find a GIF similar to this one at some point. I laugh pretty hard every time I see that specific GIF, but I hope I've proved my point and explained the meaning of this emote a bit. This Barbarian emote is kind of a two-in-one reference as well, in my opinion. First off, we have the obvious gesture the Barbarian is making, which we all know means I have my eye on you or anything to that effect. What some of you clever ones out there have probably noticed as well though is that the sound this emote makes is very similar to the classic Among Us sound that has since become a quite popular meme used in gaming videos and elsewhere on the internet. This is another case of Supercell being a bit late to the party, since Among Us was very popular during the beginning of COVID in 2020, and this emote wasn't actually released until a couple of years later in 2022. I personally think this emote is a little bit cringy, but it can sometimes be fun to use, and I myself do use it every once in a blue moon. This wizard emote is pretty simple, as the wizard is simply dabbing. I don't know when this particular emote was released, but I can only assume it was early on in the game's history, since dabbing was a dance move, or a meme depending on who you asked, around that time. I'm sure we're all painfully familiar with what dabbing is by now, so I won't bore you by going into detail on the history of dabbing, the cultural impact of the move, or anything like that. One thing to mention though is that there is actually another random version of this emote in the game where a bunny can be seen doing the exact same thing, even with the exact same sound, but the bunny is using a wizard hat for some reason. I'm not actually sure why that one was added too, since it is essentially the exact same emote, but hey, the more emotes the merrier, I guess. Now this battle healer emote is probably one that went over a lot of your heads. It isn't perfectly clear what this emote is referring to at first, but after some thought, you guys might notice that this emote is actually a reference to what your mom looks like when she gets out of bed in the morning. In all seriousness though, if you guys did enjoy this video, please consider dropping a like down below to let me and the algorithm know that you enjoyed it. If you guys did like this style of video and want to see more like it in the future, go ahead and subscribe to let me know. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.